At Christmas dinner, my 8-year-old daughter was sitting alone next to the trash can on a plastic chair. No one seemed to notice. Then she came up to me and whispered, "Can you do that thing you said if I felt sad again?" I nodded, and I did. 5 minutes later, my mother started screaming. I'm Javier, 38 years old, and my life is my daughter, Julieta, 8 years old. She's the first thing I think of when I wake up and the last before I sleep. A year ago, she was diagnosed with brain cancer. It affects her balance. She needs a cane to walk and sometimes suffers facial paralysis that steals her smile. But she's still my world with her big eyes and that laugh that, though less frequent now, gives me strength. My ex-wife, Gina, left after the diagnosis. She blamed me, said Julieta's cancer came from my side because my mother died of the same. Her words hurt, but I don't have time for that. Julieta needs me, and I'm all she has. My family has never been helpful. Since Julieta got sick, they treat her like a problem, keeping her away from her cousins, ignoring her at gatherings, and always making cruel comments. Poor girl, they say, but they look at her with disgust and leave her alone. Julieta feels everything. A few months ago, crying, she begged me not to go back to see them. "They don't love me, Dad," she said. I tried to explain they were our only family, that sometimes I don't know how to act, but I promised her something. If they made her feel sad again, I'd make a tough decision. She trusted me and agreed. Christmas came, and with it, dinner at my mother's house. Susan didn't want to go, but Julieta said, maybe this time will be different. Her hope convinced me, though something told me it wouldn't be. I left her at the house with my sisters, Abby and Megan, their husbands, and the cousins while I went to pick up a cake. I promised to be back soon. When I returned, my heart broke. In the dining room, the kids were playing outside, laughing under the Christmas lights. My mother and sisters were at the main table with red tablecloths and food everywhere, but Julieta was alone, sitting on a plastic chair by the trash can. Her cane leaned against the wall, and she played with a fork, eyes down. No one saw her. No one spoke to her. It was as if she wasn't there. I stood at the door with the cake in my hands, feeling a rage that burned me. Julieta saw me, got up with effort, leaning on her cane, and walked to me. Her eyes shone with tears. She whispered, "Can you do that thing you said if I felt sad again?" I nodded, throat tight, and hugged her. I knew what to do. I went to the kitchen where everyone chatted like nothing was wrong and pulled out a letter I'd written months ago, just in case this moment came. I carried it in my jacket as a reminder. In the letter, I laid out how my family treated Julieta with contempt, how they sidelined her for her illness. I also wrote that I wouldn't help them with money anymore. For years, I'd paid Abby and Megan's debts, my mother's mortgage, even my nephew's expenses, but that was over. I left the letter on the main table, took Julieta's hand, and said, "Let's go." I forced a smile. She nodded, and we left without looking back. 5 minutes later, I heard my mother yell, "Javier, what is this?" Her voice was full of anger. I didn't stop. I put Julieta in the car, stored her cane, and drove away from that house. In our apartment, I made Julieta hot chocolate, and we sat on the couch. She looked at me and asked, "We're not going back, right?" I shook my head. "It's you and me, little one." She smiled, and for a moment, everything was okay. But it wasn't the end. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Messages from Abby, Megan, and my mother. Some apologized, others insulted me. Abby wrote that I was selfish. How could I abandon the family for Julieta? Megan said she understood, but that I should think about the future when Julieta was gone. My mother was worse. She called one night and said, "Get real. Javier, that girl might die, and you'll be alone. Don't fight with us, or you'll have no one." Her words hurt. For a second, I doubted. What if she was right? But I looked at Julieta, drawing at the table in her wool hat, and knew she was enough. "I don't need anyone else," I told my mother and hung up. The weeks that followed were tough. Chemo left Julieta exhausted, and the side effects were brutal, but she kept fighting. One night, while reading her a story, she took my hand and said, "Thanks for not leaving me with them, Dad." I just hugged her and promised to always be with her. Abby showed up at my apartment one day with a fake smile, saying everyone missed Julieta, that the dinner was a mistake, that we could fix it. I let her talk, but didn't believe her. When she finished, I said we weren't going back. She got angry, called me a bad son, a bad brother, and said I was destroying the family. I didn't care. My family was Julieta. I tried to keep Julieta's life as normal as possible, taking her to art classes when she could, watching movies, playing, but the cancer didn't stop. The doctors told us the tumor was growing again, that options were running out. Each appointment was a blow, but I didn't give up. Neither did Julieta. One night, as I tucked her in, she asked, "Will I get better, Dad?" I didn't know what to say. I wanted to promise her everything, but I couldn't lie. "We'll keep fighting," I said. She nodded as if she understood. The months that followed were a whirlwind. Hospital visits became daily, and the news got worse. The tumor was growing. Chemo wasn't stopping it, and the doctor started talking about quality of life instead of a cure. I searched for any hope, experimental treatments, specialists, anything. I spent everything I had, but Julieta was exhausted, and I didn't know how to keep going without breaking. My family didn't help. After the Christmas letter, their messages were pure venom. Abby wrote that I was being dramatic, that Julieta was an excuse to cut them off. Megan tried to be softer, inviting us to a family gathering like nothing had happened. My mother, Susan, was the worst. She called one afternoon with that cold voice that made me feel small. "Javier, you're wrong. You think you can handle that girl alone. And then what? When she's gone, you'll have nothing." Her words hurt, but I didn't respond. I hung up and blocked her number. I wanted to protect Julieta from that. She didn't need to know how much they hurt me. She was already dealing with needles, dizziness, and fatigue that dimmed her, but she was too smart. One morning, while we ate cereal, she looked at me and said, "Grandma doesn't love me, does she?" I lost my breath. "It's not that, little one," I said. "She doesn't know how to help you." She didn't believe me. I saw it in her eyes. I tried to fill her days with good things. We went to the park when she could, even if she just watched the birds from a bench. I bought her a notebook for drawing, and soon the apartment walls were covered with her suns and flowers. In one, she drew her mother, Gina, but scribbled out her face with black crayon. I didn't ask. I knew Gina left us, and Julieta felt it more than I did. My family didn't give up. Abby showed up at the hospital during a chemo session, bringing cheap toys and candy Julieta couldn't eat. "I came to see you," she said with a fake smile. Julieta, within her arm, barely looked at her. I told her it wasn't a good time, but she stayed, talking about the family, how they missed us, then whispered, "Mom needs help with the house. If you could, like before." I cut her off. "No, Abby, no more." She left furious, saying I was cruel. That night, Julieta asked why Abby came. "She wanted to see you," I said, dodging. She frowned. "I don't like how they look at me like I'm wrong." I sat beside her. "You're not wrong. You're the strongest person I know." She smiled, but her eyes were sad. The days were an exhausting routine. Hospital, home, hospital. I tried to make her laugh with silly stories, but sometimes I had no strength. One night, after a rough session, she fell asleep on the couch. I carried her to bed and looked at her drawings. One said, "Dad and me always." I swore nothing would separate us. The cancer didn't stop. A call from the hospital confirmed the tumor was growing faster. They wanted to try a new treatment, but it was risky and expensive. They explained the pain Julieta would feel. I didn't know if it was right. I told her, simplifying. She said, "If you say we try, I'll do it." Her trust gave me strength, but also fear. My mother showed up at the apartment one day without warning. She looked haggard, but her voice was harsh. "Javier, we need to talk." I tried to close the door, but she came in. Julieta was in her room. "I don't want to fight," I said. She was blunt. "You're destroying everything. The family, your future. Julieta won't last. Come back to us." I lost it. "Get out." She left, looking at me like I was a stranger. That night, I didn't sleep. Her words haunted me. What if she was right? What if I ended up alone? Julieta woke up coughing, and I ran to help her. As I gave her water, she said, "I love you, Dad." That was enough. The new treatment started. Julieta endured it with a strength that left me speechless, but the effects were brutal: nausea, fever, fatigue. One night, after vomiting for hours, she took my hand and said, "Don't give up, Dad." I cried when she fell asleep. I didn't want to give up, but the world was crushing me. One morning, the doctors called. The treatment wasn't working. The tumor was too aggressive. They talked about palliative care, making Julieta comfortable. I felt the ground open up. I didn't want to accept it, but I couldn't ignore it. When I told Julieta in gentle words, she said, "I want to be with you, Dad." I nodded, tears I couldn't hide. We spent every moment together, watching movies, drawing, talking. Julieta started talking about things she wanted to do someday, like go to the sea. I promised myself I'd take her, even if time was running out. Each laugh of hers was a treasure, but also a reminder of what was coming. One afternoon, I took her to the park. We sat on a bench, making up stories about the clouds. Her cane fell, and when I tried to help, she said, "I can do it alone." She managed, though it cost her. I felt pride and pain. That night, she said, "Dad, if I don't get better, don't worry." We were already happy. I didn't know how to respond, just hugged her. The days slowed. Julieta spent more time sleeping, and I stayed by her side, reading stories or just watching her. One morning, she didn't wake up as usual. Her breathing was weak, and I knew the moment was near. I called a nurse from the hospital, who came to the house. She told me there wasn't much time. I sat with Julieta, took her hand, and talked. I told her how much I loved her, how she was my world, how I'd never stop being proud of her. I don't know if she heard me, but her fingers squeezed mine for a second. That night, Julieta was gone. She died in her bed, her drawing notebook by her side, my hand holding hers. I didn't cry at first. I stayed there, looking at her peaceful face, feeling an emptiness I couldn't explain. The world stopped. My little one, my son, was no longer here. The days that followed were a fog. I arranged a small funeral. Just a few people who truly cared about her, a teacher, a friend from her art classes. My family didn't come. I didn't invite them. Megan texted, saying she was so sorry about Julieta, but I didn't respond. I didn't want their empty words. I locked myself in the apartment, surrounded by her drawings. Each one was a dagger, but I couldn't take them down. One night, I found a drawing that said, "Dad and me always." I cried until nothing was left. My mother was right about one thing. I was alone, but I didn't want her pity or her help. Julieta wouldn't have wanted me to go back to them. Money was running out. Hospital bills were drowning me, and I could barely pay for basics. One night, while going through bills, my phone rang. It was a message from an unknown number. I opened the email that came minutes later, and the air left me. It was a legal notice from a lawyer. Gina, my ex-wife, was suing me. She said I denied her access to Julieta during her illness, that I didn't care for her properly, and that's why she lost her daughter. She wanted compensation for emotional damage. It was a final blow. Gina, who abandoned us, who never called, who blamed Julieta for her illness, now wanted to profit from her death. I felt rage, but also a deep exhaustion. Without Julieta, I didn't know if I had the strength to fight. I stared at the email, the screen lighting the dark kitchen. I wanted to throw the phone, break something, scream, but I closed my eyes and thought of Julieta. She didn't give up, even on her worst days, with needles in her arms and her body weak. If she could keep going, so could I. I called Tom, my lawyer, though it was late. He answered, groggy, but listened. "This is low, Javier, but we can fight it," he said. "Gather everything, messages, emails, anything showing Gina left on her own." That night, I didn't sleep. I scoured my phone, finding every text where Gina ignored or blamed me. I found one that hurt like the first day. "I can't handle this. Javier, it's your fault. Your mother died of cancer, and now Julieta." Each word was a dagger, but also fuel. I wouldn't let Gina tarnish my daughter's memory. The days that followed were hell. Preparing the case meant reliving Gina's abandonment. I found an old email where she wrote, "I don't want to deal with a sick child. You handle it." I printed it, along with months of unanswered messages. Tom reviewed it and said it was enough to prove she never wanted to be with Julieta. But the hearing was weeks away, and I was broken. Without Julieta, the apartment was a tomb. Her drawings stayed on the walls, sons, flowers, us together. Looking at them was like stabbing a knife in my chest. But I couldn't take them down. They were all I had left of her. My family didn't help. Abby called with that fake tone of concern. "I understand your pain, Javier, but you can't be alone," she said, as if her pity was a gift. Megan sent a photo of a family gathering, everyone smiling with a message, "There's a place for you here." I didn't respond. I knew they didn't want me, just what they could get from me. My mother was worse. She left a cold voicemail. "Javier, enough drama. Julieta's gone, and you're still fighting everyone. Come back, or you'll regret it when you're alone." I deleted it. I didn't need her venom. I remembered Julieta on that plastic chair by the trash can. Ignored by them. They didn't deserve my time. The pain didn't stop. I'd go to the supermarket and see cereals Julieta loved, pass the park and see the bench where we made up stories. Everything reminded me she was gone. One night, I sat with her drawing notebook, flipping through each page, touching the lines her little hands made. I found what I hadn't seen before, a drawing of us at the beach, with a huge sun and seagulls. Below, she wrote, "Someday." I cried until nothing was left. I swore I'd go to the sea for her, even if alone. The day of the hearing arrived. I wore an old suit, the only one that still fit, and went to court. Gina was there, in an expensive dress, with a victim's expression. She didn't look me in the eye. Her lawyer spoke first, saying I denied her access to Julieta, kept her out of her daughter's life, that because of me, she couldn't say goodbye. Every word was a lie, but it hurt like truth. I felt rage rise, but I held back. When it was my turn, Tom presented the evidence, messages, emails, the record of Gina's abandonment. I read a statement I prepared, my voice shaking. I spoke of how Julieta fought, how Gina left, how she blamed me for the cancer. She didn't want Julieta, I said, and now she wants money for a pain she never felt. The judge listened in silence. Gina kept her head down, saying nothing. After the hearing, Tom said the case looked in our favor, but the ruling could take weeks. I didn't care about the money. I just wanted Gina not to win, not to defile what Julieta meant. I left the court and walked the city aimlessly. I ended up at the park where I took Julieta that last time. I sat on the same bench, looking at the clouds. For a moment, I imagined her voice making up stories with me. "That cloud's a dragon," she'd say. I cried, but I didn't feel alone. Julieta was still with me, in every memory, every drawing. That night, in the apartment, I made a decision. I took a box and started packing some of Julieta's drawings. Not all, just the ones that hurt the most. I left the one that said, "Dad and me, always," on the wall. It was my reminder that I didn't need anyone else. But the loneliness weighed. I thought of calling my mother, reaching out to Abby or Megan, trying to fix things. Maybe they weren't so bad. Maybe they just didn't know how to handle Julieta. But then I remembered their words, their contempt, how they ignored her. No, Julieta wouldn't have wanted me to go back to them. Weeks later, Tom called. The judge ruled in my favor. Gina would get nothing. Her lawyer tried to appeal, but they had no case. I felt relieved, but not happy. Winning didn't bring Julieta back. Tom asked if I wanted to sue Gina for damages, for the pain her lie caused me. I said no. I didn't want more fights. I just wanted to move on, though I didn't know how. The apartment became unbearable. Every corner reminded me of Julieta, her laugh, her cane, her bedtime stories. I decided to move. I found a small place far from the city, near the sea Julieta dreamed of seeing. I packed her drawings carefully, like they were glass. On my last night in the apartment, I got a message from Abby, saying the family wanted to see me, that we could start over. I read it and deleted it. I didn't need their forgiveness or their company. Julieta taught me family isn't what you're given, but what you choose, and I chose her always. The day I moved, I took her drawings to the new place and hung them on the walls. This time, they didn't hurt as much. They were a reminder of her strength, her love. I sat on the porch, watching the sea. The waves crashed gently, the sun setting red. I thought of Julieta, her laugh, her voice saying, "I can do it alone." I imagined she was there with me, watching the water. "It's like my drawing," she'd say. I smiled for the first time in months. I started rebuilding my life, little by little. I got a simple job at a store near the sea. It wasn't much, but it kept me busy. Sometimes, I walked the beach and left a flower in the water for Julieta. I didn't believe in those things, but I felt she'd know. The days got lighter, though the pain never fully left. One afternoon, months later, I got a letter. It was from Julieta's friend from art class, a girl now 10 years old. She said she'd never forget Julieta, that her drawings inspired her to keep painting. She included a drawing, a bright sun with a note for Julieta's dad. I hung it next to one that said, "Dad, and me always." It was like a message from my daughter telling me to keep going. I never spoke to my family again. I heard nothing more from Gina. I didn't need to know. I was alone, but not broken. I'd lost everything, but I'd also had everything. Julieta, her strength, her love, and that was enough. Each day, watching the sea, I felt she was there, smiling, and I knew, somehow, she always would be